afternoon. You're watching the English newscast here on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are today's top stories. Politicians are attacking the Syrian regime as a military court issues indictments against 2 Syrian intelligence officers accused of carrying out the 2013 Tripoli mosque bombings. Turkish tanks cross into northern Syria from Kilis province while howitzers pound ISIS positions in the area. And China and the United States ratify the hallmark Paris Agreement to battle climate change at the G20 summit in Hangzhou. A military court has issued indictments against 2 Syrian intelligence officers accused of carrying out the 2013 Tripoli mosque bombings, prompting politicians to attack the Syrian regime. Some are even calling for the cutting of diplomatic ties with Syria. In the 44-page indictment, military investigative judge Ala Khatib accused Syrian intelligence officers Muhammad Ali from the Palestine branch and Nasser Jubin from the Political Security Directorate of orchestrating the blasts. The indictment said investigations indicated that the orders to detonate bombs outside the Taqwa and Salam mosques in Tripoli originated from a senior security agency within the Syrian intelligence apparatus. Investigators are still attempting to uncover the names of the Syrian officers who issued the orders. Just a reminder that the twin bombings killed 42 people and wounded another 400. Tourism Minister Michel Faraoun has called on Prime Minister Tamam Salam to postpone the upcoming cabinet session amid the political tension in the country. In remarks to Voice of Lebanon Radio, Faraoun said the endorsement of decrees amid the presidential vacuum and the absence of a Christian component from cabinet sessions are very dangerous matters. Since its boycott of a cabinet session last week in protest against the extension of senior military officials' terms, the Free Patriotic Movement has stepped up its campaign against the government, vowing to challenge all cabinet decrees passed in the absence of its ministers. It has also hinted that it might withdraw from national dialogue if the dispute over the interpretation of the National Charter on equal Muslim-Christian power sharing is not settled. Lebanon's political elites are expected to meet on Monday for a new round of national dialogue, seen as an indicator about the fate of a parliament session to elect a new president on September 7th and a cabinet meeting on September 8th. Turkish tanks have crossed into northern Syria from Kilis province while howitzers pounded ISIS positions in the area. Rebels and a monitor said Syrian rebels destroyed a helicopter with a Tau missile in Hama province, where they have launched a major assault in an area of strategic importance to President Bashar al-Assad. Rebel group Jaish al-Azza, part of the Free Syrian Army Alliance, said in a statement it had destroyed a Russian helicopter near a village of Rahbat al-Khattab, about 5 kilometers northwest of the outskirts of government-controlled Hama city. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said a helicopter believed to be Russian was hit by a rocket as it landed, and the fate of the crew was not known. Turkish security forces suffered a bloody 24 hours after 13 soldiers and a village guardsman were killed in 3 separate incidents in the country's east and southeast, blamed on Kurdish militants. 3 Turkish soldiers were killed during an operation against rebels from the outlawed PKK party in the southeastern province of Hakkari. Another 20 soldiers were wounded, 3 of them seriously injured in an incident close to the border with northern Iraq. Another 8 soldiers were killed during clashes with the separatist terror organization, which authorities used to refer to the PKK in the eastern province of Van. 8 soldiers were also injured in the same operation. And coming up next, Gabon's top opposition leader, Jean-Ping, declares himself the rightful winner of this week's presidential election. That's coming up next. Welcome back. Spain's acting Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy has failed to win the confidence of Parliament to serve a second term as Prime Minister, starting the countdown to a possible third election if a deal can't be brokered in the next 2 months. Rajoy, leader of the Conservative Popular Party, lost a vote of confidence with 180 votes against 170 in favor, the same result he obtained during the first vote on Wednesday. He was backed only by members of his own group, by centrist upstarts Ciudadanos, and a lone member from a regional party from the Canary Islands. Political leaders now have 2 months from Wednesday's parliamentary vote to explore alternative alliances. But if their efforts come to nothing, Spaniards will be asked to return to the polls in December. Moving on to Africa, Gabon's top opposition leader Jean Ping has declared himself the rightful winner of this week's presidential elections, accusing the country's leader of using fraud to cling to power. Ping's statement on Friday set the stage for a protracted dispute over the election after days of sporadic violence, as President Ali Bongo Ondimba also declared victory. On Friday, Ping said the results from individual polling stations should be released, echoing a call from France and the United States. Results released by election officials showed Bongo won by just 1.57%. The United Nations Security Council, acting on concerns South Sudan could again fall back into full-scale civil war, arrived in the country on Friday to demand that President Salva Kiir's government stop obstructing UN peacekeepers and cooperate on the deployment of some 4,000 more foreign troops, or possibly face an arms embargo. The 15-member council agreed last month to consider an arms embargo on South Sudan if UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon reports next Thursday that Kiir's government has not stepped up its efforts to work with the world body.
The community is extremely frustrated with the obstruction of UN peacekeeping operations that has gone on for too long. It has been extremely difficult for the UN to do its work here, whether that's the work of being out and about and patrolling on the streets in the hopes of protecting civilians who might be vulnerable, or just the work of having humanitarian access so that you can feed people who are in certain parts of this country at grave risk of famine. We've all been very alarmed by the killing of civilians that has occurred, and a surge in the reports of sexual assault being carried out against people in South Sudan, South Sudanese, in very large numbers, and also, of course, international personnel. Some of those reports, as you know, have been filed on the basis of claims made about attacks that occurred right outside some of the UN protection of civilian sites. The best way of averting further destabilization and giving that peace agreement a chance to take hold, giving the civilians a chance to receive the food that they vitally need, but more importantly to get back to planting and taking care of their own destinies. One of the most important ways to do that is to allow the regional protection force that has just been authorized to be deployed. This was the force with a set of tasks specified in Resolution 2304, providing for free and safe movement in Juba, supporting the protection of vital infrastructure, and preventing threats against civilians. We have a lot of dire situations in the world. This is one of the worst. And we are prepared as the international community to continue to invest in standing with the people of South Sudan, but we need the government of South Sudan to do its part and allow the UN and the humanitarian community to be the partners that they really want to be.
China and the United States have ratified the hallmark Paris Agreement to battle climate change. The country's ratification could help put the pact into force before the end of the year. President Xi Jinping of China and U.S. President Barack Obama called today's announcement a milestone. China and the U.S. are responsible for about 40% of total global carbon emissions, making them the world's biggest polluters. Other countries are expected to follow China and the U.S. and ratify the deal later this month during the UN Climate Change Week.
Well, good afternoon. It is wonderful to be back in China. President Xi, thank you for your hospitality in this beautiful setting. And Mr. Secretary General, it's good to be with you again as well. We are here together because we believe that for all the challenges that we face, the growing threat of climate change could define the contours of this century more dramatically than any other challenge. One of the reasons I ran for this office was to make sure that America does its part to protect this planet for future generations. Over the past 7.5 years, we've transformed the United States into a global leader in the fight against climate change. But this is not a fight that any one country, no matter how powerful, can take alone. That's why last December's Paris Agreement was so important. Nearly 200 nations came together as a strong, enduring framework to set the world on a course to a low-carbon future. And someday we may see this as the moment that we finally decided to save our planet. There are no shortage of cynics who thought the agreement would not happen, but they missed two big things. The investments that we made to allow for incredible innovation in clean energy, and the strong principled diplomacy over the course of years that we are able to see pay off in the Paris Agreement. The United States and China were central to that effort. We have a saying in America that you need to put your money where your mouth is. And when it comes to combating climate change, that's what we're doing. Both the United States and China. We're leading by example. As the world's two largest economies and two largest emitters, our entrance into this agreement continues the momentum of Paris and should give the rest of the world confidence, whether developed or developing countries, that a low-carbon future is where the world is heading. Of course, the Paris Agreement alone won't solve the climate crisis, but it does establish an enduring framework that enables countries to ratchet down their carbon emissions over time and to set more ambitious targets as technology advances. That means full implementation of this agreement will help delay or avoid some of the worst consequences of climate change and pave the way for more progress in the coming years. This is the single best chance that we have to deal with a problem that could end up transforming this planet in a way that makes it very difficult for us to deal with all the other challenges that we may face.
President Islam Karimov's funeral cortege made its way through the Uzbek capital Tashkent as thousands of people lined the city's main road this morning. Karimov, who died on Friday at the age of 78 after suffering a stroke, will be buried later this afternoon in his hometown Samarkand. Since the announcement of his death, a 3-day mourning period was declared and the preparations accelerated in Samarkand, Uzbekistan's second city. The veteran leader had run the ex-Soviet Central Asian nation since 1989. The Philippine government has blamed the armed Abu Sayyaf group for a blast that killed at least 13 people in the home city of President Rodrigo Duterte, prompting him to declare a state of lawlessness. Duterte told reporters in Davao City that he may invite uninformed personnel to run the country according to his specifications. He said police and the military will be authorized to conduct searches in a bid to stop terrorism. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a recap of our top stories. Politicians are attacking the Syrian regime as a military court issues indictments against 2 Syrian intelligence officers accused of carrying out the 2013 Tripoli mosque bombings. Turkish tanks cross into northern Syria from Kilis province while howitzers pound ISIS positions in the area. And China and the United States ratify the hallmark Paris Agreement to battle climate change at the G20 summit in Hangzhou. Those are your top stories for this Saturday. I'm Linda Tamim and I thank you all for tuning in.